Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving into a really foundational perspective in psychology today.
Oh,
The psychodynamic approach.
yeah, absolutely. Our source material really focuses on its core ideas, its strengths, but also where it gets quite a bit of criticism.
Right. And this way of thinking, it really kicked off with Sigmund Freud, didn't it? Late 19th, early 20th centuries.
That's the one. And the central idea, like the main focus from what we've read, is all about those deep, often hidden forces.
Hidden forces, like what?
Well, things like our unconscious mind, experiences from way back in early childhood, internal conflicts. The idea is these are the real drivers behind how we act and feel.
Okay. So our mission for this deep dive then is to sort of quickly pull out the most important concepts from the material.
Exactly. Understand what its supporters see as the key contributions.
And also look honestly at the challenges and the weaknesses that the sources highlight.
Right. So one of the absolute bedrock concepts the sources get into is the unconscious mind itself. Freud basically proposed that a huge amount of what influences us, thoughts, memories, desires, even fears, isn't stuff we're directly aware of.
But it still shapes everything.
Powerfully shapes our conscious experience and actions, yeah. Think of it like an iceberg. Most of it's hidden underwater.
Okay, I get that image.
Yeah.
And how does the source material explain the structure within that? This is where it gets really interesting, right? The personality model.
Yes, exactly. The material breaks it down into three key parts. First up, you've got the id.
The I.
Yeah, the most primitive bit. It operates entirely on the pleasure principle, just wants immediate gratification, driven by basic instincts, basic desires. It's kind of like the demanding toddler inside us.
Okay, demanding toddler.
Yeah.
Picture that. And then there's the ego.
Right. The ego sort of develops to deal with reality. It works on the reality principle.
Okay.
So it tries to satisfy the id's desires, but in ways that are, realistic and socially okay. It's the mediator, basically, trying to balance what we want inside with the outside world.
The referee between the toddler and Kali. What's the third part?
The superego, that's where we internalize moral standards, ideals from parents, from society. It's our conscience, essentially, our sense of right and wrong.
Ah, okay.
So the ego is constantly stuck in the middle, trying to manage the demands from the impulsive id and the moralistic superego, which, as you can imagine, often leads to internal conflict.
So it's pretty stressful.
Yeah.
How does the mind actually cope with all that conflict and the anxiety it must create according to the sources?
Oh, well, that's where defense mechanisms come in. The sources mention these as, like, unconscious strategies the ego uses.
To reduce anxiety.
Exactly, by distorting reality in some way. Simple examples highlighted are things like repression, pushing unacceptable thoughts or feelings deep down into the unconscious.
Just forgetting about them almost.
Or pretending they're not there. Or denial, just refusing to accept something that's actually happening.
Okay, so that's the internal structure and how it copes. But where does this all come from, according to this perspective? The source material mentioned childhood, right?
Oh, massively. This approach puts huge emphasis on early childhood. The sources detail the concept of psychosexual stages of development.
Right, the oral, anal, phallic stages.
Latency and
Yeah.
genital, yeah. The whole idea is that our personality gets significantly shaped by how we navigate conflicts and satisfy urges during these specific periods when we're young.
So getting stuck is possible.
Well, yeah, an unresolved conflict at a stage, or maybe getting too much or too little gratification, can lead to what they call fixations.
And these fixations supposedly show up later.
That's the theory. They supposedly manifest in specific personality traits or behaviors when we're adults. It's a really powerful story about the deep roots of our adult selves,
Okay, so that's a quick tour of the core ideas. What did the sources say were the big wins, the strengths of this approach?
Well, the material definitely points out its huge historical impact. I mean, introducing the concept of the unconscious mind, that was revolutionary.
Totally changed things.
Yeah, it profoundly influenced not just psychology, but art, literature, philosophy, everything, really. And it also brought this intense focus onto how crucial early childhood experiences are in shaping who we become.
And it led directly to techniques like psychoanalysis, didn't it?
Yeah.
Which is a whole form of therapy focused on exploring the unconscious.
That's
Feels like a
right.
very tangible contribution.
It absolutely is, no doubt. However, the sources are just as clear about the significant weaknesses and criticisms it faces.
Okay, what's the main one?
The biggest challenge highlighted is probably the lack of strong scientific evidence. Many of these core concepts, like, specific unconscious desires or particular defense mechanisms are incredibly difficult to test.
Or even measure objectively.
Exactly. Using standard scientific methods, it's almost impossible for some of them.
Right, because it relies so much on interpreting things like dreams or free association in therapy sessions.
And case studies of individuals, which the sources note makes it really hard to generalize findings to everyone else.
You can't just assume one person's deep insights apply universally.
Precisely. That's a major limitation pointed out.
Mm.
Another criticism noted is that the approach can feel quite deterministic, meaning it kind of suggests our behavior is largely controlled by these powerful hidden forces from our past. It doesn't leave much room for free will or conscious choice in changing how we act.
So bringing this all together, what's the takeaway? It seems like despite the very real criticisms about scientific testing and generalizing, well, the psychodynamic approach is undeniably a foundational part of psychology's history. It gave us concepts that are just part of how we talk about ourselves now.
Absolutely. And it continues to influence modern therapy techniques, even if they've evolved. It offers this fascinating, sometimes really profound view into our inner mental life, the lasting impact of our early years.
But there's that tension.
Definitely. The tension is really between that deep, insightful story about why we are the way we are and the, let's say, challenge of actually demonstrating these ideas empirically, like in a lab.
Okay, so here's a thought to leave you with. If, as this approach suggests, there are powerful unconscious forces quietly influencing your behavior, how might just acknowledging that possibility change the way you think about your own actions or maybe your feelings?
Yeah, and what does it mean for how we understand the human mind if some of the ideas that feel the most insightful are also the ones that are incredibly difficult to prove scientifically?
Something to consider as you go about your day.